So today we're going to provide you with a little information about the basics of transition. So some of the areas that we're going to be looking at are secondary transition services, self-advocacy and self-determination, family involvement, post-school options, and community and agency resources.
So a little definition, according to the Florida Department of Education, the term transition services or transition planning means a coordinated set of activities for a child with a disability. And that is designed to be within results-oriented process that is focused on improving the academic and functional achievement of the child with a disability to facilitate the child's movement from school to post-school activities, including post-secondary education, vocational education, integrated employment, including supported employment, continuing in adult education, adult services, independent living, or community participation. It also is based on the individual child's needs, taking into account the child's strengths, preferences, and interests, and includes instruction, related services, community experiences, the development of employment and other post-school adult living objectives, and if appropriate, acquisition of daily living skills and functional vocational evaluation.
So some of the areas that we're going to look at are employability. So does your child know what type of work they would be interested in pursuing? Do they have the knowledge they need to seek employment? Do they have the skills necessary to do the work that interests them? In their community, do they know what resources are available? Do they know how to access them? In their personal life, do they have a means of communication? What special needs do they have to access life more independently? Do they have the social skills needed to develop meaningful relationships? When faced with a problem, are they able to work out a solution? And in their daily living, can they care for their own grooming and hygiene needs? Do they know how to shop and prepare food? Will they live at home or be able to get their own place? Can they manage their own money or will they need assistance? Can they manage their own health care?
So the definition of secondary transition services looks, according to IDEA, looks very similar to what we said in the previous slide about the Florida Department of Education definition. It facilitates school to post-school activities, including the following: post-secondary education, vocational education, integrated employment, continuing in adult education, adult services, independent living, community participation. And again, it's also based on individual students' needs and accounts for the students' strengths, preferences, and interests.
Self-determination provides students with the skills to make choices, make decisions, to solve problems, to set and attain goals for their life, to be more independent, and to self-advocate.
And so once students have those self-determination skills, our hope is that they're able to self-advocate. There are both ways that we want students to advocate, and then there is what we want students to advocate. So we want them to advocate by being assertive, by utilizing effective communication, and that's in whatever communication mode is appropriate for them, whether it be verbal, written, pictures, pointing, by learning to negotiate, and also by compromising in real world situations. And then some of the things that are, might be specific to your child with a disability is to educate on their rights under IDEA or ADA. And then, like any other child, the responsibilities in their community, their civic duties, what obligations they have at home or at school. So you're able to do some of those things through learning at home as well as at school.
So according to the PACER Center, families can support their child's development of self-determination and self-advocacy skills by providing a growing number of opportunity to make their own decisions. And that can be something as simple as what they want for dinner, what they want for lunch, what they want to drink. It doesn't have to be major decisions, but every little decision helps them to develop that skill. Opportunities to explore employment, housing options, and community recreation programs. But most importantly, families should prepare themselves to accept their child in his or her new adult role and allow their children to take an active role in the decisions that will determine their future. even if it means allowing them to make mistakes. Because you're their safety net right now when they're at home. So if they make a mistake, you're there to help them fix it.
Some other ways you might considering supporting your student, ensuring that your student is involved with the IEP process and part of the decision-making process, providing information, either orally or in writing, to the school for the transition IEP, participate in the transition planning process, including the IEP, any other planning meetings that may occur, any of the decision-making that may occur, and then participate in natural support network as a trainer, mentor, peer advocate, or community liaison. And most of this, of course, you might think happens at school, right? But an important thing to remember is that many pieces can also be reinforced at home. You can remind students about the importance of their IEP meetings and the importance of their attendance and input at these meetings. Sometimes teachers will ask for student input during class, and students may struggle to articulate what they need. But if it's done collaboratively with you as a parent or guardian and your input, this can be more successful for everyone involved.
So another way that families have involvement is the considerations that you have to think about as your child turns 18. So transfer of rights. When they turn 18, young people acquire the rights and access to records that previously their parent or guardian had exercised. This includes the right to be notified and consent to evaluations, the right to invite additional participants to the IEP meetings, the right to be notified and consent to specialized education and related services. Parents are still notified of meetings regarding their child's education, even after he or she turns 18, but the rights of the parents are transferred to the student. Under the Federal Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, an 18-year-old can give his or her parents or other adults access to their education records by signing a release. Another consideration is voting. And here in Florida, you must be a resident of Florida, you must be a United States citizen, you must be at least 18 years old on or before Election Day, and you must be registered to vote in order to participate in voting. Selective services. Yes, all males are required to register with the Selective Service within 30 days of turning 18, unless they are institutionalized or hospitalized. Disabled men who live at home must register with Selective Service. A friend or relative may help a disabled man fill out the registration form if he can't do it himself. Men with disabilities that would not qualify for military service are still required to register with Selective Service, because Selective Service, the military is not allowed to say who isn't allowed and not allowed. Selective Service isn't allowed to say who is and isn't allowed to serve. So you still have to register. There are some exceptions to that. And if you go to the Selective Service website, you can get more information. And on guardian options, I'm going to turn it over to Cheyney, who's going to tell you a little bit more about those.
So guardianship and all of its alternatives are very important things for you to consider as a parent. Guardianship and guardianship advocacy in the state of Florida look very similar. So guardianship requires that the state find the individual with a disability incapacitated and unable to make decisions for themselves, whereas guardianship advocacy does not hold this requirement. So it simply allows a family member or other person to make decisions on behalf of the individual with a developmental disability. Now, both of these options require some level of legal intervention and paperwork, but guardian advocacy is less time consuming and less costly, so that might be a consideration. Power of attorney is also similar. It allows parents or guardians to make some decisions on behalf of an individual with special needs. The individual, in this case, must be able to sign all documents for themselves for this option. So if they at any point become incapacitated or they're unable to sign for themselves, then that's when the need for guardianship would apply and would be more appropriate. Some additional options to include or to think about include banking or representative payee, a person that may be appointed to manage benefits paid to the individual. A representative payee may be supported by an individual or guardian, and this role is limited to dealing with Social Security Administration. So even if you have guardianship or power of attorney, you may want to consider also applying to be a representative payee. A medical proxy might be necessary and allows a person empowered to make medical decisions, such as consenting or refusing treatment when an individual is found to lack decision-making capacity. Advanced directives are just like any living will or similar document to that and will specify courses of action to take regarding medical decisions and choices if the person is unable to make them. So, as you can see, there are many pieces to consider when looking at all of these things. And we might also look at trust, specifically special needs trust. And generally, this is a place where money can be managed and will allow for individuals to still receive federal and state assistance for their disability. This can be a costly option as well and require some time, but it's often an important consideration for adults with significant special needs. Now, it's a lot of information, so I would invite you to look at the Florida Developmental Disabilities Council and also Disability Rights Florida. They're both excellent resources for more information about these options.
Students with disabilities are no longer covered under IDEA once they graduate, but they're now served under ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Students, if they need to receive services, must first disclose their disability and meet eligibility requirements by providing documentation. For example, an evaluation, or if you've recently graduated high school, you might be able to take your IEP in. And then on top of that, they have to demonstrate a disability and negotiate the accommodations that they need. So they're no longer just handed to you.
So when students are in K through 12 education, some assistance is already in place, and the staff at the school is legally required to ensure students are receiving appropriate accommodations and modifications. However, once a student enters a post-secondary institution, these requirements change, and students are required to ask for what they need and disclose their disability, and that's only if they want to. So here's what's required of each institution when students with disabilities are enrolled. So in high school, the staff is required to identify students with disabilities, provide a free and appropriate education, modify programs, and provide academic success. When they're in a post-secondary institution, the staff is only required to inform students of the location of the office and the procedures for requesting accommodations. They can accept and evaluate verifying documentation. So if the student provides those things, they protect students' privacy and confidentiality, provide equal access to programs and services, and then they provide academic access. So notice the difference there. In post-secondary, they provide access to academics, not necessarily success like in high school. Also remember another important thing to look at, as Rita had mentioned, student records are not always guaranteed when a student turns 18. So you may have to look at HIPAA and FERPA releases and fill those out if a student wants you to have access, if you don't, if you have guardianship or if you don't have guardianship.
The supports needed by a person with disabilities in the area of independent living will vary from person to person and community to community. So some of the things you need to look at are housing, transportation, social and recreational activities, shopping and financial management, and health and safety. And hopefully we're going to be providing you with some good resources to look at in those areas.
Another really important agency when it comes to work and getting students prepared to work is vocational rehabilitation. So students can be referred as young as 14 years old, and VR can also help while they're still in school with what they call the pre-ETS program. There's a little more information that you can go on their website and check out what's available under VR.
Students with an intellectual disability are attending college courses on campuses around the country with peers without disabilities, and they're engaged in internships, paid employments in their community. As with their peers without disabilities, students with an intellectual disability are also active in their colleges, organizations, clubs, and social activities. There are currently approximately 25 Florida college programs for students with IND that qualify for federal funding. And there are a few that are listed here as well that are not available for federal funding, but are available to attend. But for more information on any of these colleges or programs, you can go to the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities, and they will have a lot of information for you.
So Social Security Administration is able to provide benefits to individuals with disabilities, and this is in addition to the typical Social Security benefits. They're also able to help with benefits planning, work incentive programs, and that can help to ensure that individuals will not lose their benefits while employed. For more information, you can go to their website and see what they have available to your student.
And we've listed 10 additional resources. And we start out with the Agency for Persons with Disabilities, and they're the ones that you would need to apply to get your student or child on the med waiver. You have also Florida Centers for Independent Living, NTACT. NTACT does require a login to be created, but it is free, and they have lots of information on transition. OSEP is the federal site that you may want to check out. The Center for Parent Information and Resources, or the Parent Center Hub. Pacer Center, while not located in Florida, it does provide a lot of good information. Fiddler's Parent and Family Services. Of course, us, Family Network on Disabilities, and Project 10. And these links are all available in the presentation if you download it.
A couple of other considerations we want to think about. So healthcare transition, if your child has some healthcare concerns that you may need more information about, we have F&D that has a special project called Family Star that deals wholly with healthcare and transition. So somebody from that project can help you with that. Leisure and recreation. We want to remember that even though we talked a lot about work and post-secondary institutions and education, that it's not all about that. We want our students to have a meaningful, fulfilling life just like everyone, and they need to remember to have some fun too. So looking at Special Olympics, a lot of times your local county or city, local parks and rec might be able to provide some recreation. I also know that Center for Autism and Related Disabilities puts out a really good list of summer camps every summer. I think they've already put that out for this year, so that's another place you might consider. Parent and peer support. So don't forget that you are not alone in this, and you have a child with a disability. There are lots of other folks in this state that have a similar child, probably with a disability. So you can reach out to national support organizations, churches, wherever you might find some support. Able Trust and Special Needs Trust. I know I touched on that for a very brief moment. So consulting legal counsel is usually a good idea when it comes to those trusts. And I know that there are also some organizations, nonprofit organizations in our state that are able to help at either low cost or free, even for individuals with disabilities. And then mental health support. This may be for you or your child or both. Just remember that there are organizations such as NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness, that are there to help if you or someone you know are struggling with mental health.
So at this time, this concludes our webinar, but we will take questions, and if you have any, you can put them in the chat or you can use the Q&A button.